What if the Jazz hadn't blown it up and never rebuilt and still had Donovan and Rudy? Where would we be? Might be pretty ugly, actually. We'll take that plus a ton of other questions on today's edition of Locked on Jazz. It's an Ask LOJ edition. Pow.
You are Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider, and this is Locked on Jazz. On today's edition of Locked on Jazz, it's a Friday Ask LOJ edition. What is Ask LOJ edition? That is when you send me your questions about the Jazz. We touch on all the top issues. It is the most popular edition of Locked on Jazz every single week. And that's coming to you again today. Ask LOJ edition. We'll get to it. What are the questions that are coming in today? What happens if the Jazz had never rebuilt? Why are the Jazz? I'm missing the big point. OKC tanked better. They got several years of top 5 picks, says Batman BYU. Will address that. Tom Atunga says that I've been a diehard Jazz fan for 30 years. He's leaving because we should have gone broke for Wemby. We'll discuss that. Has there been a scouting report change on Keyonte George? Thoughts on Taylor Hendricks? What areas of improvement, should the Jazz be focusing on? We're touching on all of that. Any concern? Does the front office have a clear direction? What is chemistry like on the team? Lots of great questions that came in. I am David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked on Jazz. It's your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. We give you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and we hopefully make it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thank you so much for making Locked on Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all podcasting platform apps, as well as on YouTube. A thumbs up is greatly appreciated, and 5-star reviews are loved. To the everydayers, I thank you. You're the best. Thanks for being an everydayer to Locked on Jazz. All right, let's get right to it. This is a great question. We really haven't addressed this. Instead of trading Donovan and Rudy, what if the Jazz had kept it together? Where would we be right now? So I actually meant to do the show during All-Star break, and then Leaf took over and did better shows. Here's where we would be. Here's the first thing of where we would be right now. Salary cap-wise, which was part of the driving force here. Donovan would be making 33. Rudy would be making 41. Mike Conley would be making 24. Bojan's extension, if we'd signed him, was a 2-year 20 or 2-year 40. So he's making 20. And Jordan Clarkson is making 23. And if we still had, actually, we might still have Nickeil Alexander-Walker on our roster, he would be making, I think it's 5 on Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And that would take us to about 100, and those 5 players, Donovan and Gobert and Conley and Bojan and Clarkson, would take us to, just those 5 players would take us to $141 million of salary, which is the luxury tax. Royce O'Neal would have been traded for Bryce Sensabaugh. Like, that deal, I still think you have to make. So the Jazz would have traded Royce O'Neal for a first-round pick to Brooklyn and drafted Bryce Sensabaugh. Okay, so you'd have Bryce Sensabaugh on the roster. Joe Ingles would have been gone for Nickeil Alexander-Walker. That trade still would have been made. And I don't know what you're doing. Your backup center would be $1 million backup center, and the rest of your roster really would have to be filled out as minimum players in the NBA that you're getting to come to Utah. Which is hard. When we did that in the past, we ended up with a decrepit Rudy Gay and a mercurial Hassan Whiteside. So that's what our roster at this point in time would be: starting Donovan and Mike Conley, still super small point guards, with Bojan as your 4, Rudy is your 5. I don't know who your 3 is. Maybe Nickeil Alexander-Walker. With Jordan Clarkson as your bench player, Bryce Sensabaugh, and then just go pick a litter. Cody Zeller is probably your backup center, like literally. Your backup power forward's got to be $1 million. You only have $23 million to fill out the next 10 players on your roster after those 5. So that's the first thing. If we had not traded Donovan and Rudy, we'd be under a massive financial crunch right now. And that's even with Mike at 24, Boyan at 20, and Clarkson at 23. But you would, those 5 add up to 141. The luxury tax is 165. And you would have been probably close to over the luxury tax for multiple years in a row. So you're really hamstrung in what you can do. Here's the other one. We would be in Donovan hellscape. The trade deadline really would have been the moment in which you would have had to trade Donovan Mitchell. Because Donovan would be moving into the final year of his contract as he is in Cleveland. And if Donovan wanted out of Utah, which I think it's fair to guess he would have, then you really, your window to trade Donovan and get anything for him was the trade deadline. The entire year, every news story, every possible conversation, everything would be about Donovan leaving. The number one and only story in the NBA, we'd be dealing with it every day. My God, it would have been awful. Now, I'm not sure that's why you make a move, but I'm just saying that would have been awful. So that we really would be walking into, and by the way, just in the sense of 3 first-round draft picks, 2 pick swaps, Lauri Markkanen and Colin Sexton, your ability to trade Donovan at the end of this season is only to the team he's willing to sign with. He owns every ounce of power. If you haven't traded Donovan by this point, and Donovan's going into the final year of his contract, then the only thing you can do with Donovan is trade him to the team he wants to go to, which at that point, frankly, your best case scenario is like you want to get high hopes as you get Paul George from the Clippers. And you do a Donovan. That's actually what I thought Cleveland should have done when the year started. What I thought Cleveland should have done with the year starts, they should have traded Donovan Mitchell to the Clippers for Paul George and signed Paul George to an extension. And then Paul George stays because he gets the extension, he gets his max contract, and he is not sure where else he's getting it, and so you get him, and then you're off Donovan. That's what I thought Cleveland should have done when the year started. And then actually, I think they're better. Darius Garland, Donovan, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, they're really good. Okay, that's a made-up trade that I just made up sitting here in a hotel room. I mean, I thought about it a lot of times, but I'm not sure. It's great. Sounds perfect. I'm not sure it's actually doable. So that's where we'd be. We'd be good. And what's interesting to me is what would have happened last year. Because for most of the year last year, there was no dominant team in the West. And you were watching the West all of last year. And let's assume Will Hardy's the head coach and Quinn Snyder's moved on. And you have Mike Conley, and you have Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and you have Donovan Mitchell, and you have Rudy Gobert, and you have Jordan Clarkson come off the bench, and you'd have to fill in with a bunch of gaps, right? You really, literally 7 through 12 would look like the Nuggets are right now. And we wouldn't have had those draft picks because we used those draft picks to trade for Mike. Like Grayson Allen at that point would have been divine, but you've used him to go trade for Mike Conley. So go through whatever rosters you want and go find minimum level players that you have on your roster at that point the rest of the way. So you're super thin. You're really good. And you can decide how good would we have been last year. And then compared to Oklahoma City, Denver, Minnesota, Clippers, Pelicans, how good would we have been this year? And then next stage is you are in Donovan Mitchell hellscape. And that's where we would be right now. If we'd held it together, we'd be going one last run. This is the final thing, knowing that Donovan's being traded in the offseason to the team he chooses for very little. If he wants out. Let's not live a fantasy land. Okay, great question. Loved it. That was, there's more to it, but I was going to do a whole show on it. Then you dig into what the moves would have been, go back, look at other players or transactions. Maybe we'll do it in the offseason. But in a short version, it's a great question. It's a good discussion. It's a good reminder. I'm not giving you an opinion of where you want to go or how what your thoughts are, but that's where we would be. So you can decide in the comment section, comment on whether or not in YouTube or hit me on X on what you think of whether or not that's where you wish you were right now. The wins would be great. How good would we be in the West? Legitimate question to be discussed. And whether you'd want to be going through all that legitimate discussion you want it to be discussed. We'll continue here on Locked On Jazz with why haven't we tanked more? Why didn't we go all in for Wemby? Old questions coming back up. A reality check on that scenario needs to be clutched up and put in there, as well as some others. And we will do all of that as we continue here on Locked On Jazz. Today's edition of Locked On Jazz is brought to you by Murdoch Hyundai, located at 4646 South State Street, also located in Logan and in Linden. The Murdoch's 80-plus years of being in Utah, maybe even 90 now. They've been a sponsor for so long, as well as the Hyundai lineup of cars it's impeccable. And when you talk about the treatment you get at Murdoch plus the lineup of cars you get from Hyundai, it's a pretty darn good connection between the two. So the electric cars, the Ioniq 5, which you're beginning to see all over the place, and the Ioniq 6 have won every award imaginable for cars out there. The SUV lineup is great, and right now you get 0% for 3 years on a 2023 Santa Fe or a 2024 Tucson. The Palisade is absolutely gorgeous, and I am excited. I've got to get my hands on the brand new Santa Fe because it has arrived, and the 2024 Santa Fe is there. I'm going to have to reach out and see if I can drive the Santa Fe so I can let you know all about it. It's all at Murdoch Hyundai, located at 4646 South State Street, also located in Logan and in Linden. Make sure if you're going to stop by, though, you email me first so we can give you the well-deserved everyday or Locked On Jazz treatment as a VIP. We'll take care of you here on Locked On Jazz. Today's show is also brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use the code LockedOnNBA for the first deposit match up to $100. Why PrizePicks? Well, because it's the #1 fantasy sports app with over 3 million members, the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers. You pick more or less, 2 to 6 players, stat projection, watch the winnings roll in. It's a good time of year to do it right now. You can start finding some specific matchups and have some fun with it. Plus, it's Demons time on PrizePicks. You can now win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. Demons and Goblins are the newest and most exciting way to play at PrizePicks. Squares marked with red demons or green goblins get you different payouts. You can now win up to $100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. It's all there. Steph going more or less than 29. What about Luka 32? You make the calls. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use the code LockedOnNBA for your first deposit match up to $100. Pick more. Pick less. It's that easy. It's PrizePicks. PrizePicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Thanks so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. If you're a fan of what's going on with college basketball, Locked On Sports Today, your national 24/7 stream is bouncing from one game recap to the next. So make sure you go load it up, Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or on Amazon Fire TV for you. All right, let's get to the next question. These are kind of similar from BYU Batman. You're missing one big point. This is in regards to yesterday's show. OKC tanked better. They got several years of top 5 picks, and the Jazz middle around and basically will finish with picking around number 10. And Tomatunga says, I stopped watching the Jazz for the first time. Been a diehard for nearly 30 years. And I can't go through another rebuild when they don't do it right. Should have gone broke for Wemby. There was more to it, but lost comments. All right, so let's talk about these. Can we just make sure we all remember what going broke for Wemby really is? So what it meant last year that we win 21 games for a 14% chance of getting Wembanyama. So we would have had to win 21 games because 22 was the number that the Spurs and the Rockets had. So we needed to go 21-61. You really wanted to do that. And you have a 14% chance. I actually am not saying that that's the wrong idea. Wembanyama Like I have a fun little question going on around the league right now. If you have 10 years and you're starting a franchise, who you're starting with. And actually, I'll give Keyonte George credit because he took Nikola Jokic. And I was like, oh, actually, that's the right answer because you win titles immediately. And then the rest of us are taking like Shea or Luka. I'm taking Luka or Victor. And the fact of the matter is, like, Nikola Jokic wins you a title now. And, like, you probably win 3 of the next 4 titles. And then who cares what happens the next 6 years? You've won 3 of the 4 titles. So, actually, I think Keyonte was probably, like, right in our conversation about that. Like, give him credit. He's a huge basketball fan, thinks the game a lot, watches the game a ton. So, I'm not saying that I actually necessarily think that that's the bad call because I think Victor's a transgenerational talent. But, like, let's just make sure we know what we're talking about. We're talking about 21 wins for a 14% chance. And I'm not saying you shouldn't have tried it. Like, you got a chance to go out with, like, you know, whoever it is. Like, in my year, like, when I was a little kid, Bo Derek, my next generation, Jennifer Aniston. Like, I don't know who, right? Like, I don't know who yours is. But, like, yeah, you got that chance. You got a 14% chance. Yeah, maybe. Take a run at it. But that's what it was. It was 21 wins and 4. So, like, you're basically going to have to sit Lowry for most of the year. You're trading Conley, Bogdanovich, whatever that trade was to the Lakers for 1 first-round pick that you end up getting anyway. You're going to have to do that at the beginning of the year to get rid of your players. And you're going to have to be really horrendous. Okay, if that's what you want. Again, I'm not, like, on the holding the Jazz together previous conversation we just had. I think that's fine, too. Just make sure you know what you were doing. It's not. Just don't be a Pollyanna about it. Don't pretend it's all perfect. Like, just understand what you would have done. So, yes, the other one is you could have won 21 games and gotten Brandon Miller, who's good, but I'm not sure he's worth 21 wins, right? And I think, you know, or more likely you end up with who was it? I don't even remember right now who the 3rd pick of the draft was this year. Oh, Scoot Henderson. Oh, dear. Right. Then you could be Portland where your draft pick is shooting 37% and 29% from 3, and there's 0 track record of that player ever making it in the NBA if they shoot that in their first year. Right? Like we would have loved it. We would have gone crazy for Scoot. Right. Okay. Let's make sure. And I don't mind the conversation. I just want to make sure that we're holding the conversation with the correct parlance of what is actually taking place. 21 wins, 14%. By the way, one other note on this. You're missing one big point. OKC take better. You got several years of top 5 picks. They've actually had 1 top 5 pick ever. 1. Josh Giddey was the 6th pick. Chet Holmgren was the number 2 pick. And a little bit to my rant yesterday, like, what happens if Orlando takes Chet Holmgren? They have Paulo Banchero, who's really good. But what happens? Or what happens if they then miss and take Jabari Smith? Which isn't a miss. He's fine. But he's not that. Right? Like, is the OKC model that we're all in love with and everyone says the Jazz should have followed? You got to do the OKC model. The OKC model is that they got Chet Holmgren with the number 2 pick. Thank you to Orlando for taking Paulo Banchero. It's really good, but Chet's going to be better. And the OKC model is great that they got Jalen Williams. Ironically enough, by the way, Oklahoma City traded for the 11th pick of that draft, Jang, with the 11th pick of the draft, ahead of Jalen Williams, who might not be able to play. And thank God Washington took Johnny Davis in one of the worst draft picks ever. Because Johnny Davis is shooting 37% and 24% in 2 years in the league. No track record those players make it. Like, thank goodness. And thank goodness the Spurs took Jeremy Shohan instead of Jalen Williams. They deserve all the credit. But, like, the model, wow. Has the scouting report changed on Keyonte George? Oh, boy, has it ever. The first one I'm noticing is you never see guards getting picked up at 70 feet in this league, and everyone's picking up Keyonte at 70 feet and forcing him to bring up the ball under pressure the entire time. So that's the first one. The second one is they're just crazy physical against him. I mean, I think it goes back a little bit. I had made a big deal about that Aaron Holiday play when Aaron Holiday kind of punked him and ripped him. Like, teams are testing him to see what he does with physicality. He's so gifted and so talented and so skilled. What is going to happen with physicality? And so the scouting report on him is way different. Keyonte and Taylor are just on vastly different timelines right now. So, like, Keyonte just started a long time ago, and now there's enough data on him and how he plays, and he's had enough success that he's the front page of the scouting report, and teams are now scouting him differently and playing him differently to see how he reacts to it, and he's got to figure that out and get by that, and then there'll be the next iteration he has to deal with. Taylor's just playing right now. Taylor is allowed to just play because he's so much less experienced. It's just a different stage of where you are in your career. But this is the first super hard stage for Keyonte. Scouting reports are out. He's done enough. He's had his Twitter phenomenon. Donovan tweeted about him. All the players talked about him. They all know who he is. And now guys want to get him. Guys want to stick it to him a little bit. Guys want to have it on him. And so, like, you don't think Dylan Brooks looks at if he gets to play after getting in a thing last night, Dylan Brooks is going to look at me like, oh, I want Keyonte. Let me go see if I can punk the crap out of him for the entire night and see how he reacts. Right? Like, this is the NBA manhood stuff that he's dealing with. It's hard. What are your thoughts on Taylor Hendricks? What are the areas the Jazz need to improve? Am I worried about Keontae's up and down shooting? Does the front office have a clear direction? What is chemistry like on the team? Who do we need to pair with Keyonte if he hits? Those are the final questions on today's edition of Locked on Jazz, and they're all coming up next. It is time to pair two champions. It is time to pair the number one fantasy basketball host in the country, Josh Lloyd of Locked On Fantasy Basketball, along with the number one spot for your ride or die, eBay Motors. But today is actually, we don't have players today. Maybe we're too late in the fantasy basketball season. Oh, I was so excited for the Josh Lloyd player picks that we get every Friday. We don't have them today. Never mind. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is your ride or die. That's eBay Motors. eBay Motors is still a champion. Josh Lloyd is still a champion. Josh Lloyd just doesn't have picks for you. From superchargers to roof racks to exhaust kits to LED headlights and more. Whatever it is, eBay Motors has got you covered. They have 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You always find exactly what you're looking for with eBay's Guaranteed Fit. Your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need and at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into an MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at eBay Motors Guaranteed Fit. Eligible items apply. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Motors Guaranteed Fit. Available for U.S. customers. I hope you win your fantasy league. I hope Josh Lloyd helped you. Still listen to Locked On Fantasy Basketball and still go to eBay Motors, where 1 million parts for you and your MVP, your ride or die. It is Locked On Jazz today. Thank you very much. Jazz and the Rockets tomorrow from Houston. We'll have that for you on Sirius XM as well as on the Utah Jazz app and on KSL Sports. All right, let's get back to your questions. A little rapid fire here. No points gained today. We do it every other week. What are my thoughts on Taylor Hendricks? The improvement is awesome. He really was really far away when the year started, and he's really making a lot of progress and doing things well. And the night in and night out guys he has to guard, it's just stunning. So super impressed. His mental take on it really strong right now. His effort's really good every night. His natural skills are incredible. He's showing more offensively. There's a whole package of player to be put together there. Like, I think, look at the timelines as I talk about a lot about Jalen Johnson and Jonathan Kuminga. And I think, you look at them in their third years and they really have gotten better. What are the areas the Jazz need to improve, focus? What are the areas where you think the Jazz need to focus on improvement? I would go with 2. We're allowing 22% of opponents' possessions in transition. We've got to find a way to limit that. I buy into the offensive rebounding. I don't necessarily agree that our offensive rebounding leads to leak outs. I believe that offensive rebounds are important, and so therefore, even if you did allow leak outs, that's fine. I don't entirely know why this is happening. But I would say it's a major thing that needs to be looked at in the offseason. We are allowing 21% of opponents' possessions, 20.8, in transition. The next closest is Phoenix at 18.5. It's just a lot. We're allowing 10 field goals a game made in transition. That's one more than anyone else in the league. That doesn't sound like a lot. It's a lot. We're allowing 27.5 points per game in transition. Portland's next at 24.5. The median is 21.7. So we're allowing 6 points more in transition than any of the average team in the league. We got to look at that. The other one, and I have not always been that bigger of a concern about this, but there is less variance taking place in a bunch of areas in the NBA right now. The offenses are generally better until the league changed the rules. The shot selection from one team to another is very similar. Some of the areas, like if you look back, the Jazz had a massive advantage a few years ago in their shot selection, was better than anybody else in the league under Quinn, and it gave them 2 or 3 points, a point a night. That's gone. That's gotten very slim, which I do for the first time begin to think turnovers have become more and more important. That the offense is so good, the variance in how you shoot and what you do, that some of the things you got to get shots off. So the Jazz, I think, need to cut down on their turnovers. And I think they've got to find a way to keep people out of transition, and those might be interrelated. So that would be it. Am I worried about Keyonte's up and down shooting? No, I'm not. I was worried about Keyonte when he was below 40 and below 33, like Scoot Henderson, like Johnny Davis. Yes, I was worried then. He is not there anymore. He has worked his way past it. I don't actually know what his season numbers are because I've actually just been looking at his last numbers for when he started. Since he started, he's been way above it. So he's at 40-35 right now. The 40 is not great, but it's not totally terrible. And there's a lot of signs he's going to get over 40%. He's at 39.8 and the 34.7 from three. So it's not great, but it's not problematic like it was earlier this year when I was really concerned. Does the front office have a clear direction? Yeah. So I keep hearing this, and I would ask the question from people on this when they say, does the front office have a clear direction? Is it that you don't think the front office has a clear direction, or you would like the front office to have a different direction than what it is? So a lot of people are saying that the front office doesn't have a clear direction, is that we're not just unrelentingly tanking, that we're not winning 21 games on purpose for our 14% chance for the number one pick. And then the other one would be like, I didn't ever want to rebuild. Okay, so that's not that the front office doesn't have a clear direction. It's that you don't like the direction the front office is going. That's so fine. You're 100% allowed to that, your own opinion on that. But to parlay that as the front office doesn't have a clear direction, I don't think is true. The front office has been wide. There's probably no team in the league that's more consistent. I would also say that the two trades that we made at the trade deadline must be a bit more nuanced, because really smart people in the NBA have come up to me like, why would you do that? So let me just kind of revisit it one more time. Detroit has $70 million of cap space, and they call for Simone Fontecchio when they're not going to make the playoffs. They're like 8-80. They're telling you that we are going to give Simone Fontecchio an offer sheet in the offseason that you're not going to match. So if you could trade us Simone Fontecchio right now, we'll give you the first pick of the second round. And why would Detroit do it? Because Detroit probably is going to save $15 million on it. In other words, they can sign Simone to a 4-year, $32 million contract. Simone takes it. No one else is going to beat that. But if he had to offer the Jazz, they might have had to go to a 4-year, $50 million contract to get Simone. Something like that. I don't know what the numbers are going to be, but just get the concept. And so suddenly Detroit saves himself $18 million by giving us the first pick of the second round. That's a no-brainer trade. Like, you actually don't have a choice. Like, you're boxed into a corner. They have cap space. They got you. That's the way the league works. Like, you make that. Okay, the second one is we traded Kelly Olynyk and Ochai Agbaji, two of my most favorite people. I just don't think Kelly's great. I'm a huge fan of Kelly. I don't think we're keeping Kelly Olynyk in the offseason as a free agent. At 30, he turns 33 here in a month. And we have Taylor Hendricks, who plays his position, John Collins, Walker Kessler in that same realm, Lauri Markkanen. Like, I don't see us re-signing Kelly. I just don't realistically see that. He's 33. It doesn't. And then Ochai, I actually admire this. It's a bummer, but you got to get off your guys before, not after. Everyone knows. Ochai in 17 games and 9 starts in Toronto is shooting 38% from the floor and 26% from three. Now, he might just be in a shooting slump and he gets to an offseason and he figures it out. And then he's got such a great body that he probably can become a pretty good player in the NBA. But we obviously made a decision that we didn't think so. His last 46 games, he's shooting 39% from the field and 26% from three. It's a lot. And we got a first-round pick for that. And the other question is, did we decide that Bryce Sensabaugh has a better future than Ochai Agbaji? And if we did, then you had to clear that path. That's going to be an ongoing issue for us. So, not to have a clear direction, those trades are pretty clear with the direction. One of the pieces of our clear direction is we're not interested in battling for the 10th spot in the play-in on April 15th of a season. That it's a longer-term build for the long well-being for the chance to win a championship. That's a pretty clear direction. So I quibble with this concept that the front office doesn't have a direction. I think they've been wildly consistent. And I would say instead that the direction might not match what you want. What is the chemistry like on this team? Do guys hang out? Do they go out to eat on the road? Are there cliques on the team? The chemistry's gotten much, much better. Early in the year, there were no cliques. And actually, there was just nothing. They didn't naturally flow together. The team worked really, really hard, which is ironic because what's so interesting about that is I actually think it's what made the trade so hard is that the Jazz did such a good job of building team culture this year and getting the guys to all get along that when suddenly Simone and Ochai and Kelly got traded, the soul of the team kind of left a little bit. And they really lost their kind of gusto because I think they missed those guys so much, which is ironic because early in the year when I was sitting at practice, I was watching, I was like, wow, this team doesn't connect at all. And they built it up to build that. I have not seen many cliques, but I actually don't know. I think cliques, like the way you're saying cliques, I'm assuming you mean bad, and that's actually not usually the case. It's actually good. Small little groups inside of groups of 12 are actually usually pretty helpful. What do we pair with Keyonte if he hits? Big, long guard. You want to be long. League is big. It's all about length. Give me length all the time. That is Locked On Jazz today. Thanks so much for tuning in. Hope you're having a wonderful day. We'll be back with you for Postcast from Houston. Thanks so much for tuning in. We now send you the first ever 24/7 national sports channel. It is Locked On Sports Today. Also available on Amazon Fire TV. Thumbs up, comments, 5-star reviews. Much appreciated.